Does your child's challenging behavior overwhelm you? The No More Meltdowns app helps you manage challenging behaviors. Some will say that tantrums are manipulative behaviors. Others see them as a lack of emotional control. A third view is that we're asking the child to do something he just doesn't have the skills to do. Keep in mind that your child is trying to communicate something to you and you need to figure out what it is. When challenging behaviors continue, despite consistently enforcing rules, it doesn't matter anymore whether the behavior was intentional. You need to try a new strategy. You need to understand how to alter the triggers of those behaviors and/or teach better ways to cope with them. Some children have a consistent pattern of challenging behavior. They always break things, or they always scream and swear. Others have more complicated patterns. Do you know which behavior is more frequent? You may remember one type of behavior because it's scarier. It puts your child in danger, but that behavior may not be the most frequent. Do you know what triggers the behaviors? Have you seen a pattern in when they happen? Can you answer these questions about the last tantrum your child had? Perhaps you get so caught up in the meltdown that you don't notice or can't take the time to think about it. Or perhaps you do notice at the time, but when you go to write it down, you've forgotten the details. I mentioned earlier that we often try to stick to rules for rewarding and punishing, but there may be less obvious rewards and punishments than giving stars or spending time in a timeout space. Think about what happened. The time in the timeout space, which is supposed to be a punishment, may actually be a reward. It may let the child escape from a situation that is placing demands on him. When professionals study a child's disruptive behavior, they do ABC recording. For each time the behavior happens, they write down the antecedents, what just happened before the behavior occurs, what happened earlier in the day, or, if they can find out, what happened the night before. They make detailed notes about the behavior and how intense or dangerous it was. And they note the consequences, whether what happened after the behavior was an obvious reward or punishment, or what the child got out of the situation. They may also try to guess what the child felt inside as it was happening and after it was over. They note the response of the grown-ups and peers who were around. The purpose of the recording is to look for patterns. When the child is faced with a certain situation, does he or she always act in a particular way? Or said differently, do tantrums more likely occur when the child is in some settings or with some people than they do in others? No More Meltdowns lets you do the same ABC recording that professionals do and helps you find these patterns. It then helps you figure out how to plan ahead for situations that you know will trigger the problem behavior to reduce the likelihood that the behavior will occur. It is an iPhone app, but you can also record online or record with Android or Windows devices by recording online through your browser. It is particularly helpful if you record in the moment or as soon as you can after the meltdown subsides. The app asks you about the situation that was present before the behavior. It gives you some general categories of situations and then asks you follow-up questions about whichever you chose. Was the child tired or sick? Did the child feel uncomfortable sensations? Was there a lack of structure in the activity? Did the child have to do a demanding task? Did the child have to wait too long? Was there a threat to self-esteem? Was the child not getting attention? What type of behavior occurred this time? You specify the general kind of behavior and then give more details about the aggression, the self-injury, verbal aggression, passive refusal, repetitive stinting behavior, whichever you selected, and then you judge how intense it was consistently using a scale you set ahead of time. It also asks you to think about what happened as a result of the behavior, in the environment or how you reacted. Again, you answer some general categories of response and then you give more details about what you did. You then send the data to the No More Meltdowns website. You can immediately go to the website to get tables and graphs that help you figure out if there's a pattern and what that pattern is. Some of the output focuses on helping you find the antecedents or triggers. This table has the meltdown sorted by type of behavior. Here we show self-injury behavior, verbal aggression, and passive refusal. And then it has the antecedents in the columns: internal triggers, sensory issues, threats of self-esteem, and unmet needs for attention. You can see that the self-injury behavior always happens when there's been a threat to self-esteem. Verbal aggression, lashing out with threats or cursing, happens in some of the self-esteem situations, but it also happened when there were uncomfortable smells or loud noises, and when the child wanted attention. A response of passively refusing to do something most often happens later in the day when the child is tired and around eating, with smells or tastes of food the child doesn't like. One type of SymTrend graph lets you see the day-to-day variation in the number of challenging behaviors that occurred. Here on the top line is the total number of meltdowns. It started at 11. The other lines show the frequency of the particular types of meltdowns: physical and verbal aggression, and passive refusals. After the parents started using a prevention plan that included a discussion with the child to prepare him for what was about to happen, that started here, the tantrums decreased. Other output lets you see which behaviors happen more frequently and whether the behavior is happening more often than it used to. Here, damaged property used to happen about 60% of the time and now never occurs. Unfortunately, the child is now using physical aggression towards others more often. He went from never pulling, pushing, and grabbing to doing it about 75% of the time. While you may have guessed that the child is getting into fights more often, you may not have seen this shift. You can also see the impact of what you've been doing in response to the behaviors. Here, the person yelled and reprimanded and took away privileges. The behaviors seem to persist and are still severe or moderately intense. Once you get a sense of what is triggering problems, the app provides some guidance based on Dr. Jed Baker's book, No More Meltdowns. The guidance is in the app as well as on the website. 3 types of guidance are provided. There are ways to change the triggers, teach skills to deal with the triggers, or set up reward or loss systems. The system offers multiple ways to change the triggers, whether it is changing the sensory environment, play games in a quieter area, change timings, simplify tasks, provide visual supports. It also recommends ways to teach skills, providing strategies to cope before a difficult situation starts. It also talks about using rewards. I know you'll find No More Meltdowns helpful. If you have an Apple device, get it at the iTunes App Store. If you have an Android or Windows device with a touch browser or want to record online, go to SymTrend.com/NMM.